And just like that, we're back. Some breaking Buffalo Bills news, which means Emergency Buffalo Bills Shout podcast at your service. He's Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. The Buffalo Bills have made news this afternoon, claiming former Super Bowl champion, former Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Darius Slay. He was released on Tuesday. The Steelers and Slay came to a mutual agreement to part ways just days after, ironically, he was a healthy scratch against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills make a little bit of a surprise move because if you look across their roster right now, this is the one position where they're pretty healthy outside of rookie 6th-round pick Dorian Strong. They have 3 cornerbacks that are playing a considerable amount of time. They add Slay to the mix. What's your first reaction here, Ryan?
A little bit of confusion for that very reason. The fact that this is one position that is performing well, it's relatively healthy. But at the same time, I look at the veteran leadership part of it. I look at not so much how he played this year, because this year has not been a good year for him in Pittsburgh, but how he played in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
After last season in Philadelphia, going into free agency, I thought maybe he would be a veteran target if the Bills wanted to go that route. So you do have to think big picture. Maybe the Bills feel like their system is a better fit than what Pittsburgh's was. And if he plays anything like he did in 2024, this could be a sneaky good addition late in the regular season.
This feels to me a lot like I felt about the linebacker position when A.J. Klein was brought in off the couch and the Bills had no answers when they had a bunch of issues and injuries in that room. To me, this gives you another option down the line if you are hit by a rash of injuries. I mean, we see what's happening on the defensive line right now. You know, you have Ed Oliver out, you have Michael Hoyt out, you have Landon Jackson out, and now Joey Bosa is going to not play. That's 4 guys down on your defensive line where, you know, we're talking about the depth being an issue in that room. And so I think this is a move that isn't necessarily about December 3rd, the Cincinnati Bengals game. This is about insulating yourself and giving yourself another option should you need it. And I think you make a really great point. It hasn't been a good season for him, but Slay's playing in a 3-4 defense, completely different than the style of defense that he played in Philadelphia as a Super Bowl champion a year ago. And I seem to remember another current Bills secondary member, a defensive back that was getting absolutely trashed for his season in Miami a year ago. And all he's done is come in and made a huge contribution to the Bills defense. And I'm talking about Jordan Poyer. He's been irreplaceable for what they've done on defense over the course of the last 8 weeks or so since he replaced Taylor Rapp. So I don't think you have to look at it as, is this adding the Super Bowl champion version or the All-Pro or Pro Bowl version of Darius Slay? I got to look up if he ever did actually win over All-Pro. He had some really good years in Detroit before he ever landed in Philadelphia. He's an older player. I don't think you're counting on him to play every snap or to be one of your starting cornerbacks, but he gives you really important depth for a defense that has been quite a bit banged up this season.
Yeah, and it's funny because you look at this year's performance. He was actually graded out extremely well as a tackler in about 6 of the 10 games, high marks. And we know how much the Bills love cornerbacks that can tackle. But go back to 2024 in Philadelphia. 54.7 completion percentage allowed when targeted. That's a great number. He gave up the second lowest amount of yards per target and yards per completion of his career in Philadelphia last year. So you don't just, lose it altogether. I get aging happens. He's 34 years old. You might lose a step, but this was someone that was playing at an elite level 1 year ago, despite his age. And then this year, like we've already commented, hasn't gone so well for him. And another thing that's happened this year, Matt, is a lot of injuries, ailments, little things that have kind of hampered him throughout the year, which I guess will fit right in here in Buffalo with all the injuries that they've had. But that's the other part of it too. Is he healthy? Is he trending in the right direction? Because you're one injury away from potentially needing him. You look at this secondary, Christian Benford has returned to, I would say, an elite level at cornerback after a slow start this year. I think Trey White's coming off of a really good game against Pittsburgh where he made some nice plays. You're still easing Max Hairston back into this lineup or into the lineup in general as a rookie. And then after that, you can start talking about, is he an upgrade over Jamarcus Ingram? I would say so. No knock on Ingram, but the resume speaks for itself with Darius Slay. So you're going into this playoff push. You're going into potentially the playoffs, and you want a guy that can help you maybe get over the hump if an injury does occur, someone that can come in and play some reps here and there. And for that reason, I'm not against this acquisition at all.
So I'm definitely not against the acquisition. How the Bills are able to onboard him, that will be an interesting piece here. We can talk about that for a second. Then I have one more point that I want to make before we get out of here. The Bills currently sit at 53 players on their roster. So there's going to have to be something that shakes here to add Slay into the mix. And there's a couple of levers the Bills can pull. I mean, right now, we just talked about it on the podcast we did an hour ago. Joshua Palmer is pretty banged up with this ankle injury. And if you need him to get back to 100%, I also would throw Terrell Bernard in this category, dealing with the elbow and the ankle that he's kind of been nursing himself through. You might want to consider maybe putting one of those guys on injured reserve, letting them truly get back to 100%, open up the roster spot. You have a couple of, elevations where, you have one more for Balin Spector, and I think you might have another linebacker on your practice squad. But if not, you have some guys there. They might have to make it another addition, make some moves on their practice squad. But this is a situation where you bring in Slay, you're going to have to make a decision somewhere. We'll see what that ends up being.
Yeah, IR is one lever. 6 defensive tackles currently on the 53-man roster. Fedarian Mathis is a guy that I could see them releasing and trying to sign to their practice squad. I'd have to look at the veteran numbers that they have currently on the practice squad, but Jordan Phillips being another one of those names. So those guys come into play or into my mind.
We got the breaking news. The breaking news, Ryan. The Bills have released Jamarcus Ingram, cornerback Jamarcus Ingram.
And
he's been a healthy scratch the last couple of weeks. And I think we could get him back on your practice squad.
Easily get him back on the practice squad. Knows the system, has been here his entire career. I'm not shocked by that. That was that was the next position. If you're going to go cornerback swap, I just mentioned it. Would he be an upgrade over Jamarcus Ingram? I just said that. Yes. So that makes sense as well. There were levers to push. Obviously, none of the injuries, though, that you and I were just considering were serious enough for the Bills at this point in time, I guess, to consider in terms of an IR move.
All right. My last point here, the one other idea I have, and listen, he's in for Jamarcus Ingram. So I wouldn't imagine right from the jump that we're going to see him active on game days. I wouldn't expect him to see him on the 53-man roster unless they have a specific plan for him this week. But how I think you can maybe get him integrated at some point is getting him into some creative dime looks when the Bills go into a heavy defensive back rotation on third down or third and long or obvious passing downs. The Rams lead the league, Ryan, at 32.4% in terms of utilizing dime defense. That is a huge number. That's almost double what the Bills run at 18.4. And the Bills run dime quite a bit. Maybe the Bills want to lean into it a little bit more against some of these teams over the next couple of weeks that, are going to try to pass the ball a little bit. Cincinnati and obviously New England and Drake May. So that's one area where I think you can maybe look to integrate him. I still think this is long-term depth, but I think you also want to get a guy like this who's probably wanting to join a better situation, a better team, better position for a playoff run, and get him kind of integrated into the situation.
And don't get me wrong, your reasons about, playing against pass-happy teams is much better. But also there's a matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles in a few weeks. And he's going to help them, I would think, quite a bit based on his history there and his knowledge of that scheme and what they try to do. So there's even a little bit of gamesmanship there. There was talk about a mutual interest in a return there, and obviously that didn't happen with the Bills claiming him. So there's a lot of reasons I'm sure that the Bills put into this, and it's obviously personnel first. The dime package is upgrade over Jamarcus Ingram, who's been a healthy scratch. But there's also those little, intangibles as well that I'm sure they considered.
If you're considering some of your options for this holiday season, you want to make sure you get to Amtrak.com and let them take care of your holiday travel. And Amtrak is chock full of gifts. If you want to give out a gift card this holiday season, get somebody an Amtrak card and help them out. There's no middle seats ever on any ride, generous luggage policy. There's ease of travel. You arrive in comfort every time, and there's free Wi-Fi. Head over to Amtrak.com for more details. And Ryan, I think this Sunday, it's feeling like Slider Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
It absolutely is. And with Tops and King's Hawaiian, you cannot go wrong. Head over to Tops before game day, after game day, whenever you want. Make it a Slider Sunday at Tops Markets.
For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. That'll do it at the 10-minute mark. We'll see you next time, everybody. Take care.